Yes, just decided to go live directly. No intro. Ah, so how's everybody doing in the chat? Hello, conversation with Christy, seeker of truth. Heaney. Oh, bless you. Yes, today we are joined by Indigo Twin.
Hello.
Yes, Indigo. I must admit, I'm a little jelly of Indigo.
Why?
Some of her experiences and whatnot. But yes, today's show we're talking tonight's episode today, very today. Sun's still up. It's today, and yeah, we can get into the whole round Earth thing. But yes, today's episode explores something that touches the edge of what we know, and maybe, just maybe, what we are. Near-death experiences, or NDEs, that's the nomenclature, have been explained away by many as just simply being the result of a DMT flood. It's theorized. Now, we know DMT exists in the brain. Oh, there's our other Wounds to Wisdom. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing okay. We're just getting started.
Great.
And Wounds to Wisdom also has a story, which is quite interesting. So, yeah, the NDEs have been attempted to be explained away by many as just simply being the result of a DMT flood or electrical activity that happens in the brain when we die.
Yep.
However, there are some, there's some things that we're going to be getting into. So I invite you to listen with curiosity, not certainty. And maybe you leave tonight with more questions than answers, and that's okay. That's just a sign that our minds are still open a little bit. We're willing to consider things. Right off the bat, I'm just going to get into a case I was talking about, and you certainly I invite questions and interruptions. This is by no means any it's live. I'm not going to pretend it's not. I'm used to this, so this is actually part of the reason why I got involved in this experiment, is just to learn to deal in confidence and composure. So why not just make things a little rough on ourselves, huh? Yes. Tonight's case, or the first case I'd like to talk about, that sheds a little bit of light on some of this stuff is, there we go.
There she is.
That there is Pam Reynolds, back in 1991. Oh, she's a singer out of Phoenix. Back in 1991, she had a rare brainstem aneurysm, and she was treated at, there we go. She was treated at the Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, okay, so because this was in her brainstem, and at the time, I still don't know if this is something that's changed to recent, due to recent science. I've been Indigo Twisting. Yes. Rick Spicer, good to see you. Because of the technology of the time, they had to completely do what's called a standstill operation. And what that is basically where they kill. It's a little bit more like, I don't know if anybody remembers seeing the movie. Oh, what one was that? I think it was not Deep Star 6, The Abyss, where they theorized that they can put this person in a hypothermic shock and then kill them, stop their heart, and then revive them later. Well, that is what this operation entailed. What they wound up doing is basically stopping her heart, cooling her core temperature, her blood temperature down to 60 degrees. They stopped all brain activity. This is verified by an EEG. They taped her eyelids shut, and then they put 2 earplugs in her. And these earplugs, they just would send out a simple clicking pattern, click, 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 at 90 decibels. So that's pretty good volume. And what that is for is, that's not obviously for the conscious mind. It's not for the patient, really. it's to give when they're messing with the brain, they like to have signals like that going through, and they'll do all sorts of
Yeah.
really weird stuff sometimes with brain surgery. So that's what they were doing.
Because
Okay.
you can't really be like, you are asleep, but it's not the same as when they, like,
Yeah.
anesthetize you for, like, a regular
Mhm.
surgery,
Sure.
because they want your brain to be active, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Well, I
they
guess it would be anyway because
yeah.
it's your brain. I don't think your brain ever
Yeah,
stops.
you can have no neural activity, and they'll still introduce pulses into it because it's still an electrical machine. They did drain the blood out of her head, most of the blood out of her head, which is to me, that just sounds weird. But her first experience was when they were doing this, of course, nothing for a little while. And then she recalls being pulled out of the top of her head, and she's looking down at the operating room. The first thing she noted was she's talking about how, wait a minute, she recalls a conversation the nurse had with the surgeon where she's saying, this artery's too thin. And the surgeon just simply says, well, let's just work on the other side. So the nurse switches, but she's noticing that the nurse is working on her leg, and she's wondering, wouldn't say in her head, but she's wondering to herself, are they working on the wrong portion of my body? Because obviously, I'm in here for a brain surgery. And that's explained later on. And then she recalled the doctor moving and opening up a drawer with drill bits in there. And she's like, that's kind of interesting. And then, of all things, she recalls the song. I don't know if I can even mention it because I know that, heck with it, I'm not monetized. I know that Don Henley is very litigious when it comes to his music being played, but I believe I can mention the name of it. The Eagles song, Hotel California. And she thought that is a little ghoulish. I mean, you can check out, but you can never leave, a part of the lyrics to that song. And she thought that is just, what's that about? Around this time, she recalls seeing a pinprick of light, which she went into, and she then recalled seeing her grandparents, relatives physically, but seeing them clothed in light. And she recalls talking to them and saying how much she missed them and everything else. And she mentioned saying this to her mother that, no, her mother, her mother saying to her that, it's time for you to go. And that if you stay with us much longer, you won't be able to return. She's like, oh, I'm fine with that. I'm paraphrasing heavily, but uh, she said, "No, no." And at this point, they said, "Don't you want to see your husband, your kids grow up, and things like that?" And she recalled her uncle, of all people, took her and walked back with her to some portal, and she recalls him pushing her back into her body, at which time she wakes up and she just knows that she said it was like jumping into a cold pool of water, which makes sense. Your body's chilled. So, I mean, at 60 degrees doesn't sound like it's that much. When that is your core temperature, that's pretty rough. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
she
just,
comes.
like, especially when you're in the OR, like,
Yeah.
when I
Oh,
got
yeah.
my thyroid surgery,
Mhm.
the initial dose of the knockout medicine didn't work,
Oh.
probably because I was, like, so nervous, so my adrenaline was spiked, and I
Mhm, mhm,
remember asking them, I'm like, "Can I get a warm blanket?" Like, as they're wheeling me into the OR, and they're like, "Why are you awake? Like, you're supposed to be
mhm.
out already," and I just remember having this is not my actual NDE, but it must have been so weird for her to have, like, her, like, brain in the physical world hearing, like, the song and the doctors
Mhm.
talking, and then, like, her spiritual awareness
Yeah.
having, like, this NDE, and then,
Yeah.
like, coming back to the because she would have been in the OR, I assume, when she came back into her
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Um, well, I think she doesn't really talk about that too much. Um, Talking about floating in a tunnel, being pushed back into her body. Um, when she came back too, that's when she recalled hearing. I was hearing a conversation. It was a female voice. She said something about the arteries being too small. Um, let's see here. Yeah, her eyes were taped. Her eyelids were taped shut, so she couldn't have seen anything. Um, yeah,
And they
it's not.
do that with brain surgery because I see people reacting in the chat. So when they do trigger warning surgery talk,
She's
when
getting
they
gross, people. She's going to go into the details.
yeah, so when they do brain surgery, they want to shut down your sensory stimuli. So like no touch, no sound, no sight. The reason why they tape your eyes shut is because also
Mm,
your head is open.
yeah,
They like open your head to do the surgery. And so that's why they have the earplugs in and the eyes taped shut because they don't obviously be terrifying if you like open your eyes and your head was open. You know what I mean?
yeah. That would be a little bit of a creep out factor. I well
Yeah.
imagine.
So
But having brain surgery, sometimes they do want you awake. So it's a
Yeah,
little mix and match. It depends on the situation.
yeah,
I mean, that's not, I don't know if this is really involving, this person was dead, right? When she was
yes,
having the
yeah,
surgery, this
yeah.
yeah,
procedure, she went into this space. So it's really what happened to her in this space. And I'm sure Indigo's going to talk about her experience. And I
yeah,
certainly have a different
yeah,
experience than some as well. And it's your awareness, and it depends on what you believe spiritually, but
yeah,
our consciousness is still very much part of us. It's almost like tethered to us. So it might be hovering above us and it's witnessing things, and it may even be having a conversation
yeah,
saying, why aren't these people,
yeah.
putting a blanket on me and keeping me warm, for example? Whoops.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and with this particular case, what we see is that this person, she envisioned coming out of her head, and when she's seeing things around the opera, she's seeing her own body, looking down on it, and she's only seeing it at the very beginning stages of it. She's, before they pre-drill and all this other stuff, to use gross terminology, but right before they really start getting hit, from what I've read, before they really get really into the gross, some of the more meat aspects of it, she's already into the gone into the tunnel, which is common to a lot of these. We see a tunnel of light or a spinning tunnel. Some people recall seeing a tunnel with like a fan at the end of it, that kind of weird light effect that you can get. Um, but yeah, when she came to, she was in the recovery room, and she later was talking with her husband and her family, and she was recalling some of these events, and she just passed it off as hallucination. She'd say, "Oh yeah, I heard Hotel California. I've heard all this stuff. I heard people talking," and they're kind of laughing about it. And when the neurosurgeon walked in just to check up on her, tell her how she did, and all that, he got a little he got a little freaked out because he knew that she should not have experienced that, and he confirmed a lot of what she said. The part about them working on her leg, well, it turned out what they were doing was they were going for the ephemeral, big words, ephemeral. There will be a test, and it will count for the end of your grade at the end of this.
Oh, shoot.
But what they do is they use that artery because it's a major artery. It's nowhere close to the head neck region. And what they do to keep your organs alive and to keep your body chilled, they pump and take blood out and they cycle it through a machine because your body, for all intents and purposes, isn't functioning. So they run it through a
Right.
machine to keep the organs alive because,
Flick! Flick Fox!
Flick
Good to
Fox, how
see
you doing?
you.
Completely off topic, but I will be on my channel. Let's see here.
I
We
got
put this
so
up real quick.
excited. Sorry.
Well, everybody gets excited at good to see you conversations with Christy. everybody gets excited to see Flick Fox. She just has,
It's been a while.
yeah. But yeah. So then there was
I'm
another
sure it,
case.
it freaked out the doctor.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they were
Because
talking
he's
about,
like,
yeah,
you're not supposed to remember what music we were playing while we were doing the surgery, and
yeah,
you're not supposed to have heard the conversation where we like rerouted
yeah,
your blood through your
yeah,
ephemeral artery, and like,
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Just
sure
being,
he was like scared about a lawsuit or something because he's like, oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
god, did the anesthesia not work, or
yeah, yeah, and then that has happened too, which is also quite scary. Sometimes the paralytic, big again, words is hard. Wow, I didn't mean to get into paralytics, but who would have thought that would have come up? Sometimes in these operations, what will happen is the pain-killing knockout side drug isn't administered for multitude of reasons. Now, this is rare, so I do want to specify that. This is very rare, and this is a part of the reason why the anesthesiologist runs through some of the procedures they run through. So, don't worry about it, the kind of thing. But what can happen from time to time is paralytics kick in, but not the anesthetic side of the house. So what will happen is your body's essentially paranoid, but you're witnessing this. So
that
that can
happened to
happen.
a gentleman in,
Yeah.
I want to say, in England,
Hmm.
where he actually his family sued the hospital because
Yeah.
they're like, that's messed up. But
Yeah. Very.
basically what happened was he was getting a heart surgery, and um his consciousness, what he woke up.
Hmm.
So the paralytic worked, but they didn't administer the knockout, like the anesthetic, correctly. So he
Hmm.
woke up mentally during his heart
Yeah.
surgery, and how his brain coped with the horror. Because, right, so he would have been like this,
Yeah.
looking down, like he could move his eyes,
Mhm.
like seeing his. So
Yeah.
what his brain did was interpret it as that he had been abducted by aliens,
Mm.
and right, because like
Yeah.
he saw this light, like he didn't remember that he was in the OR.
Yeah.
He
So
couldn't see the doctors, and so what his brain did was interpret it as like, I got abducted by aliens. And then I guess over time, as he was healing post surgery, they put the pieces together and
Yeah.
realized, like, okay, this could have been like a lot more dangerous of a situation.
Yeah.
Because he's paralyzed, so he couldn't say anything to the doctors to let them know he woke up.
Yeah.
So for a
Yeah.
long time, he would have these nightmares.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this particular case, I could see them being extra worried because they could not see the person's eyes. Because and we see this happen a lot with sleep paralysis, which that's a whole other rabbit hole. With sleep paralysis, what typically happens, and it's normal. I mean, but what can happen sometimes, you can wake before your brain has gotten rid of the paralysis chemicals, and what happens is, yeah, you can move your eyes, but only your eyes, and yeah, and of course the brain's in a fear state, amped up incredibly, and that causes some weird effects that are kind of that can be kind of hallucinogenic in nature, and that explains. But yeah, that's a whole other show altogether. There was another case involving, and we don't know the full patient's name, but we know of it from the nurse, and that is Maria, what's been called the Seattle shoe case, and that involved a woman named Maria who was hospitalized for a heart attack. After being revived, she described floating outside of her body, floating out of the hospital. I mean, she was dead. She was floating outside the hospital, outside the hospital building, and she recalled seeing a shoe on the third floor. Now, in this particular case, there is no way she would have direct knowledge of that. Okay, so the nurse is Kimberly Clark Sharp, say that 3 times fast. Clark Sharp. We say it 3 times, she'll appear in a mirror. But the nurse went up and she thought she would humor this gal and, okay. So she went to the 3rd floor out the window, and sure enough, she found a shoe that had the wear patterns that Maria had described. Now, this case is interesting because this person's body wasn't even located anywhere near where this happened. So, and the woman's room wasn't anywhere near the 3rd floor. The operating room, of course, wasn't. The ICU wasn't. So yeah, there's no way she should have had knowledge of that. So this seems to indicate that there can be an element that's not like what they believe happens, or that necessarily always happens, where it's just a DMT flood or sudden electrical activity. Because in the earlier case, there couldn't have been any, electrical activity because they were monitoring. They were monitoring specifically for that with the EEG constantly going. So yeah, and I mentioned those 2 cases right off the bat just to say, if nothing else, just to say that there's evidence that exists that proves that this is not, and both cases have been, depending upon who you go to, there have been some attempts at debunking it, but I noticed that the debunking can't explain, like, oh, she saw all this stuff. In the case of our first case, they say, oh, well, she could have seen all this stuff in advance. Well, no, she couldn't have, because her eyelids were taped shut. Even if she was conscious for it, she would not have been aware. She would not have been able to. First of all, yeah, her head is physically isolated in these operations. You couldn't look down and see her legs to begin with. Now she would be able to tell the conversation if she could have heard,
Wow.
but
And
she couldn't. But she
but
couldn't hear
she
because her
had
ears were blocked.
90 decibels of
Yeah,
beeping being
yeah, and
like
again,
in her ears. So like
yeah,
how would you
yeah,
explain
yeah,
the
and
retention of that?
yeah, and again, the fact they're monitoring the EEG means she's not getting direct visual stimuli to begin with. But even with that, her eyelids are taped down. Her head is still isolated. She can't move her neck to look down. So yeah, and the doctors were the nursing staff. They were really nervous about that, and they never really went into why. But yeah, it probably something to do with the earlier case, because I do know that is cases like that are also told in medical lore, um, or medical what's the term I'm thinking of, canon or whatever. So yeah, this, but I mention these cases simply just to show that there is an element of mystery to this, that all of it can't be explained by DMT flood or by a sudden spike in electrical activity. So with that in mind, uh, Indigo, would you mind recalling your experience?
Oh, sure. So in my 20s, around 20, oh wow, almost a decade ago now. Where did a decade go? Anyway,
Yeah.
so when I was 25, I was driving to see my parents, and usually like the road that I would go on, I could just, check traffic. I would just go straight across. So essentially I saw this car that was like 4 streets. There was like 2 streets, a red light, and 2 more streets. And I thought, okay, it's the fastest they could possibly be going is like 35. I can just go straight across before they even get to me. They were going like twice the speed limit.
Mm.
And so like I went to go straight across, and they direct hit T-boned the car I was in. And so just like for set, I was in a Mazda, which is fairly low to the ground, and they were in like an SUV. So they hit the car, and I had this moment where before the car impacted, I was like, what a strange sound. Almost like already my consciousness was like not fully in my body. Like I heard the crunch of the car, but it didn't occur to me that I was actually in an accident, because that must have been when I blacked out, because my head went back and definitely hit the headrest. Like even to this day, I can feel there's like a flat-ish part right here, where quick trigger warning, car accidents. Sorry, I feel like the
Yeah.
story is so sudden that it's like if I don't throw that in there, but basically, because the headrest was there, I'm pretty sure that's why I'm alive.
Mm,
Because if the headrest hadn't
mm,
stopped my head, I would have
mhm.
snapped my neck.
Yeah.
So they hit like this straight on. The car spins completely around. While the car is spinning, I assume. This is what I assume reading back my journals I wrote after this accident, because they wanted me to try to recall everything I could for the court,
Mm,
right? Like
mm.
where was his car,
Oh.
where was my car, whatever. So the car spins around, my head hits the headrest, I blacked out. I come to facing the curb into oncoming traffic. And that's when I realized I've been in a car accident.
Mm,
The NDE does not happen when I'm blacked out in the car. I'm just giving you the pretext of the accident itself, like where I was at. So I realize I've been in an accident now because I've woken up in a
mm,
car that's wrecked. And,
mm,
everything flew everywhere because it spun around, all that. The guy behind me called emergency services. So while I'm conscious sitting in the car, I've got EMTs reaching in through the front window and the back window, which they broke in through the back window of the car because they had to lift me onto a stretcher that they put in through the passenger side because the door was so caved in. Like, because when I woke up, I saw, I believe something protected me in this accident, by the way, that was more than the airbags, because my leg should have been broken. Like what I say, like the car door was separated from itself on the inside of the
mm,
car.
mhm.
That's how
Good.
hard the impact
Yeah.
was.
Mm,
Yeah, my leg,
yeah.
completely fine. The airbag from the steering wheel did not actually impact my chest, which again,
Mm,
I can't explain why. Like it should have. Like I should have been pretty bruised up in my sternum.
mm,
So I
mhm.
think also I had like other things protecting me in this accident. So the EMTs are like, "Don't move. We have to put you on the stretcher." And I'm not understanding why. I'm awake. I could just help them move me out of the car, and they're like, "No, because your spine could be damaged. You could have, we don't know." So they put me on the stretcher, and they're lifting me into the ambulance. And at some point, they're asking me like, "Who's the president? What year is it? What's your birthday?" I'm looking at the top of the ambulance thinking like, I'm in an ambulance. And then for a minute, I kind of like start to lose consciousness, and I feel very like warm almost. Like
Mm,
it was really weird. It was like I was like, I remember saying to the EMTs in the ambulance as they're driving me to the hospital, they're like, I was like, I'm gonna take a nap. And they're like, do not fall asleep.
mm,
I did though. I had to have for like a split second. So this is where time speeds up, right? So like
yeah.
I'm in the on the gurney in the ambulance, and I go, I'm just gonna take a nap. And then I'm suddenly outside of my body in a 360 view of the entire accident, looking down at my body in the ambulance. And I had a very clear moment when I was like, that's my body. And then there was a moment where I heard, at first I was like, am I getting tinnitus? Because I get tinnitus when I'm awake. And I heard this very clear, like, ringing in my ears, like, almost like if someone was doing, like, a tap on one of those, like, singing bowls. And I remember, like, my astral projection, I guess, for lack of a better terminology, kinda getting washed into this light. And I very clearly saw my birth parents. And in my brain, I was like, "Is this a lucid dream?" And they're like, "No." I like and I said, "I could be with you, mom and dad?" And they said, You could be." And my body in the ambulance had a moment of clarity because the EMTs were like, "No, wake up. Like, what are you like?" As someone touched my shoulder, I want to say, like the EMT, right? Because in this split second, I fell asleep. I took a nap. And so I feel like a hand on my shoulder, and I feel a moment where I'm like, "Oh, I could go back." And my birth parents were like, "You could." I said, "Should I?" And then in the ambulance, I had a very clear feeling of I'm 25. What, like, I'm too young. Like, I have so much more to do. And then I was like back in the ambulance and they were like taking me to the hospital.
Wow.
But I just have this very clear memory of having a 360-degree view of the street.
So Indigo, how
But not
long was your how long were you no longer with us?
It had to be like less than a minute
Okay.
because I feel like in the ambulance, it's like, I'm gonna take a little nap, and the EMTs were like, "No." I heard one of them say, "No, you're not."
Yeah.
Who's the president? And I was like, I don't want to play this game. No, because they're trying to keep me awake. They're trying to like see if I was clearly concussed. I had to have been. If I still have like a little flat, area in my head. But yeah, it was one of those things where I was like I very clearly chose to come back. You know what I mean? Like it was, yeah, even now I can remember just feeling that warmth. It was almost like this warm kind of like light and sort of like, and it was weird because again it was all focused on me. I didn't think like, oh, my parents will be sad if I die or anything. It was like I have so much more to do is the feeling that I had and why I chose to come back. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going to go, right? And it was a choice between, right? Like both of my birth parents died before I turned 25. And so for them to have been the ones that I kind of like saw when I had my NDE is also like spiritually symbolic. You know what I mean? Because like my birth father was a pastor in his early life. And like so I know I get like my strong spiritual core from him. And so yeah, I just had a moment where I was like, "Oh, my body's in that ambulance. I guess I should come back." Like, But it wasn't like I say it kind of in a sarcastic tone because that's the tone I heard myself think it in. Because, right, this is like for my body, this was happening within under a minute because obviously the EMTs were like, no, like, wake up, like, no naps.
Yeah, wow. Did you, well, maybe I'll ask this at the end. Yeah, I think I'll ask that at the end. Theresa, I'm going to let Indigo grill you,
Okay.
being that she's a kindred spirit in this regard.
Sure.
I must say I am a little jelly about this whole subject.
Don't be jelly.
thank you,
Don't be
Pete.
jelly, and don't
Yeah.
don't rush it. So I'm a little bit different than Indigo. And for those that don't understand, the near-death experience, whether you're going towards the light or remaining in sort of darkness, I believe, and there's no way to prove this, by the way, but I believe your brain protects you. So whatever comfort exists out in the ether, it protects your brain from what you might be experiencing. So whether it's a traumatic event, car accident, my father is dying as we speak, and so his brain is starting to go into this cocoon. And I believe that there is a cushion, a comfort, a place of safety. My experience was I had been experiencing tremendous grief. I was in a downward spiral of sorrow. Literally could not, there were no endorphins, there were no what's the other one? Endorphins, dopamine.
Dopamine, okay.
Yeah, so I had nothing left. I had been completely drained and bereft. Now, the day that I had my heart event, I had been at a yoga event for a nice hour and a half, almost 2 hours, and I was feeling incredibly centered and actually peaceful. What ended up happening is I had already had a heart attack, my first heart attack in 2006, January 3rd, 2006. This event happened in January 27th, 2019. And I got a stabbing pain in my chest around 11 o'clock at night. And it was as if someone took a knife and carved like almost a square around the chest. What was happening, and I didn't know at the time, I thought I could not be possibly having another freaking heart attack. Everyone told me I couldn't. The ambulance came. I was hooked up to machines. They got me to the emergency room. As people are, checking vitals and getting my history and taking off my clothes. And I asked the nurse to call family and friends, just someone to know about what was happening to me. And as soon as I heard that they reached my best friend, I turned to the doctor, and I didn't say I was going to sleep. I said, I think I'm going to pass out. And I did. And I kept hearing them call me. So people were calling me, doctors were calling me, nurses were calling me, and then there was nothing. What I was experiencing was spontaneous coronary artery dissection. So basically a paper cut in the artery. And then I also had Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which is broken heart syndrome in English. Literally, my heart broke. The blood pooled behind the heart, and Takotsubo is like a Japanese pancake. So my heart, all the blood drained out of the heart because none could get to the heart. Now, so it's not a typical heart attack. And it's, so I'll do two sort of themes here. One, what was my experience as this was happening, but what the medical professionals were doing. And I sort of
So
was
really quick.
Oh, yeah.
Because you said you had this was in 2019,
Yes.
but your first heart attack was in
2006.
2006. So was that
It was
also
not a
an
stab.
atypical
Yes. As a matter of fact, both my heart attacks were
Well, like,
unusual and atypical. Well,
unusual.
because it wasn't based on high blood pressure. It wasn't based on cholesterol. It wasn't based on family history. I had had severe endometriosis and I had 4 fibroid tumors and had to have a emergency hysterectomy complete when I was 33. They put me on drugs at the
okay.
time. I had been on experimental drugs called Depo-Provera before it was approved. So I was getting injections from the age of 28 to 33 in my tush every month on each cheek, bringing me into menopause. So chemically, there's my
Okay.
hormones were all fakakta. So that first heart attack, they
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but
it is, it's funny. Oh no,
okay,
I'm, you
okay,
know,
so I just wanted to understand because
yep. They're two different,
so
they're two
okay,
different instances of heart attacks.
gotcha.
Completely unrelated. So the
Okay.
second one was again no high blood. It had nothing to do with high. Thank God for learning kintsugi is absolutely true, Mish. And so what happens is the doctors are once they figured out I was having SCAD, right, spontaneous coronary artery dissection, because I didn't have any of the normal stuff. I didn't feel or know they were intubating me. I didn't feel or know they were cracking my, pumping my chest and they were trying to resuscitate me and they were putting the paddles on and I was flopping all over the place, they said. And it took them 15 minutes to bring me back. Well, 14, but I round up. And in that interim time, I am not in the light, but I don't feel afraid. I am not scared. I feel safe. I'm slightly annoyed no one's talking to me. They're talking about me. And if you speak to any of the cardiologists or emergency fellows that were working that day, I should not have heard anything they said. But I couldn't understand why, like, I was in this really nice place. I don't know where I was. I think there was a time that I was a little bit disappointed there was no light. I really being sort of spiritual and everyone talks about going into the light and like, where's my freaking light? Where's the light for me? And what does it
Okay,
mean that I'm in
maybe
the dark? But just so you know, so people experience, I'm sorry, I got a puppy in my lap. He's wiggling.
no
A lot of
apologies
people
needed.
see bright lights in tunnels, and then there are people like me who feel like we were in complete darkness, yet there's this feeling of peace and safety.
Is it like floating like in a sensory, like one of those
Deprivation tank kind of
deprivation
thing.
aspect?
So I don't know if I can relate it to that. I don't know how I can actually. This is a hard thing to articulate, right?
Yeah.
Because it didn't. I felt like I was in space or in a room in space, but so weightless probably was what I was experiencing. Puppy, I love you. You're killing me here. All right. Oh, good God. Hold on. Let me just transfer. Oh, my little chunk of monka. I've got two of them sitting on one's on my lap, one's on my hip. They're crushing me. So they also are comforting me because I've been crying for days knowing that I'm going to lose my dad. And so it's been, I've been a
Yeah, I'm
little bit
sorry
all,
about that.
that's okay. Thank you. So with the near death, some people, I think it's like a peaceful void. And one of the things that I believe, and I mentioned, I believe our brains, no different than if you're falling out of a building. I believe anyone 9/11 jumping out of the Manhattan buildings, their brains protected them in the end. They never felt or knew what was happening because your brain goes into this space and time that says, I gotcha. And it shuts it down. You don't feel pain. You don't feel anything. Your body might be broken and battered and bruised and, whatever. That's with any kind of event, I really believe that there is this mechanism in your brain that goes, shut down, let's put them in a place of peace. And that's one of the reasons they say when someone's in a coma, and there's a great story, I have to remember it, of a woman who was hearing every single thing people were saying about her. And she was completely aware, and they wanted to basically not only take her off life support, but when they did and she was still breathing, they talked about her like she was dead and that there was nothing there. And it had to do about the medicines that were paralyzing her so she couldn't move on. But anyway, back to the NDE. And
Oh, wow.
so I, at one point, was not aware that my best friend had gotten to the hospital. Now, mind you, I was 80 miles away from her. So it took her 90 minutes, probably less to get there, because this was now the 28th of January. It had clocked over into like 1 or 2 a.m. And the doctor said, we doubt she's going to pull through. We don't know about her brain activity. And because I'd been down for so long, we want to put her on ice and put her into a coma. So
Not
that
a full
because
coma.
you can't, wow, I look green, don't I? You can't sew this tear in the artery. There's no way to go in and do that.
Fix it, yeah.
So it's so putting you into a coma, what it does is slows the heartbeat down, slows the body down in order for, the blood, because now the heart might be beating, but there's no blood to fill the vessel. And, there's a flow. It's called ejection fraction, right? So most of us operate at like 60%. You're never at 100 because blood goes in, blood goes out. That's how the heart works.
Right.
So what I was hearing were the doctors saying, we're not sure. We think we should put her in a coma. We should put her on ice. Let's give it 24 hours. And I'm laying there, and now I'm aware. And it's dark, but it's not dark. And I don't realize there's a tube down my throat, by the way. So I'm not understanding why no one's talking to me. I'm like, so my frustration was, okay, I'm just going to lay here and let people just do whatever. It was as I was coming back, I really felt like I was happy in this space. So I didn't want them to continue to talk about me because I was happy in the space. And I don't know if I wanted to come back or didn't want to come back. There was no push. There was no voice. There was no anybody like, come on back, Theresa, after I heard the doctors telling me to come back.
Right.
What I will say is I shouldn't have been, and now I'm in the room and I have an awareness and no one knows I have the awareness and I can actually hear them now, but I am heavily paralyzed, no ability to move my arms or my legs, and or wiggle my fingers or wiggle my toes. And at one point I hear somebody say, is she moving? Like, is she doing something? And my best friend said, yes, look at her toes. And the next thing I know, she goes, she knows me very well. I don't like my feet out from the sheets because I'm cold. And I didn't realize why I was cold. So she's like, she's cold. And all they said was tears were coming down the side of my eyes once she said I was cold. The safety of that experience for me was like electric shock therapy to my brain. It improved the endorphins and the dopamine flow. I was no longer in this massive depression, which is why I understand why they do electric shock therapy for people, because it does something to the synapses. And this is where Ben would come in understanding more of the technical medical piece. It's really bothering me, this green. Hold on. I'm going to turn on the other lamp.
That's okay. I was purple before, so
Okay, there you go. At least that light makes it a
yeah.
little bit brighter. I was like, I look like, the Wicked, the movie, going green.
Oh no.
So it's,
So
I
did
think,
you
go ahead.
do you think that your feeling of frustration is what kind of like connected you to your friend? Because I'm wondering if you sensing her there was also like a spiritual rather than a physical thing.
100%. I think, and I heard her voice. So there was this awareness that, oh my God, my friend is here. And oh my God, my friend is here. Like, it was kind of a twofer in my head. But I also knew as soon as I heard she was there, I felt safe in this physical body because I knew someone had my back.
Yeah, see,
And
my like for me when before they put me in the ambulance, so I kind of skipped the part where like I come to they asked who they should call and I'm like my mom
right. Yeah.
gave a
You
stranger my mom's phone number. Like I don't remember
right.
like that piece as much as I do like getting put into the ambulance because for
Yeah.
me the safety came like during the NDE because
Right.
my mom had to follow the ambulance in her own car to get to the hospital.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
because they call her, so she drove to the accident site.
Oh my God. So for a
Well,
mother, I can't even
I
imagine
yeah,
what it's like
because
for a
she
parent.
lived only like 3 or 4 blocks away from ish where I had my accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she drove there, and then kinda they were like, "Well, since you drove here, then, like" kinda like she met them at the ER, and
Yeah.
they took me back and all that. So,
Yeah.
like, there was that sense of, like, if I choose not to come back, I'm also safe because
Yeah.
I was more afraid to die in the ambulance. I think that's a big reason I came back. I was like, I guess if I'm gonna die, I'd rather die in the hospital. I don't know why.
Yeah. So when I was in the so I have throughout my years, especially when I was traveling, I always had a specific prayer that I said in gratitude, whether I was in this life or not. If I were to die today, and then I have this routine that I go through, and I did that in the ambulance. But there was this sense that as much as the EMT said, "No, you're going to be fine," I know that's just a line. I didn't feel like I was going to be fine. Like, I kind of felt like this was going to be the end.
Mhm.
But I wasn't really, I was a little frightened because I had some unfinished business. But, and I'm reading a couple of comments in here. I did
Yeah.
experience an out of body visual. At one point, I was above and I didn't understand, is that me? Like, I wasn't making the connection right away. Um but the experience, and probably ignorant, I did talk a little bit about it, is I felt like I was in this, it was a dark space, but it was peaceful, it was calm, I felt safe, there was no fear. So whatever, and there was obviously time where I was not cognizant, right? You're dead. Um
Yeah.
they're trying to bring you back, there's no blood to your heart anymore. And so you know when I first had the experience, like, I was passing out, I think there was this mental safety, well, I'm just passing out. I didn't know that I was actually dying. And so I didn't actually see people working on me at that moment.
Mhm.
It wasn't until, like, I was in my hospital room, and the way that this cardiac unit worked is they bring you into this ER room just for cardiac, and you are the only person in that room, and everybody's working on you, and the machines are going, and you've obviously been intubated, and so my awareness was in that room, and even though I shouldn't have seen, and even though I shouldn't have known, I knew that there were 2 or 3 physicians. I knew that there were people talking. I could feel that those people, and I kind of felt untethered, right? So I was saying this to
That's a
Indigo
good way to
earlier,
describe it.
that
Yeah.
I kind of wasn't really floating, but I also wasn't physical. I wasn't a physical being. That's the only way. I was more
Yeah.
consciousness than I
Yeah,
was a
100%.
physical being, right?
Yeah, I get you.
And somebody had also asked something. Was it Heaney? I think Heaney said something earlier in the comment, but
Yeah. I think they were asking me if there was like I saw someone ask a question, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
yeah, some of this stuff is scrolling by fast, but I think that I am a person of faith and spirituality, and there is this otherworldliness that I think brought me comfort. And like I said, as I'm laying there, even before, again, I'm still not aware there's a tube down my throat. So I don't know why I can't talk. I feel apparently one of my brothers arrived. And so he was holding my hand, and my other friend was holding my hand, and I couldn't squeeze. The only thing that I could do. Oh, yes, Flick Flock. That's the comment I was going to talk about with Flick Flock. So hold on one second. That wiggling my toes was the first indication that I was mentally aware, because they didn't know how much brain damage. And even though I wasn't supposed to be aware, when they were talking about me being brain damaged, I was a little put out. I was like, what do you mean I'm brain damaged? I'm like, oh shit, am I brain damaged? And why am I? And I didn't know I had a heart attack. I didn't know, and it's really not a heart attack, but a heart event. So without going on and on and on, there's a
You kind of had a conversation with yourself there a little bit, like
you do. You have this conversation.
yeah,
You don't know. And it's 14, 15 minutes. That's a long time to
that's a long
be
time.
in the dark space.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was weeks. So it didn't feel like it. I don't know if I could say weeks. There was no sense of time, but it seemed like a long time, right? It didn't seem. That's why I kind of feel like I may not have gone into the light, but I don't know I didn't go into the light. Do you know what I
I
mean?
wonder too, yeah, I wonder if because we're spiritual people and we've like connected with ourselves, if that's why our like consciousness was
Yeah.
so
Well, and the doctor
or
said,
these moments were so like stark in our memory of like
yes.
how we felt and like what we heard or like what we were aware of.
Well, and I don't think what people knew at the time, except I knew, I wanted to die. I didn't want to be alive anymore. My grief was so profound and so debilitating. I just wanted to go. Now,
Yeah.
so obviously, clearly, something was a strong essence that didn't allow me to just surrender and not want to come back. So that's where my faith comes in, my spirituality, that heavenly connection. I also think that my mother being on the other side, she's like, biatch, get your ass back there. It's not time for you to come up and see us. And I say up, but I
The
think,
mama smackdown.
you know what I mean?
Your mama's like, girl, not yet.
Right, exactly. But I didn't actually get, and I'm a little envious that you got to see your birth parents. Like, I didn't have that. Oh, at least from an awareness perspective, I don't know that I had a conversation with anyone. It was solely me. So,
And see, I'm a little bit okay, not jealous isn't the right word, but like that you're that connected to yourself that like when you were dying, you were like, does that make sense? I almost
It
think like
does. It
maybe
does.
if, because at the time that I had mine, I wasn't connected to this, my spiritual
Right.
self the way I am in my 30s.
Yep.
But I think that's a large majority of the reason I'm that connected to myself now is because
Yep.
of my NDE.
So, I think that, and again, I can't speak for you, but your youth and your vivaciousness and uh, your ability to, as you came back, there was love for you on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think you felt the love on both sides. So whatever path you chose to go to or through would have been the right path. At the time for me, it was like I had already begun my spiritual journey in 2017. This is 2019. I felt high, even though I was in this profound grief and this profound, pain and sorrow. I knew that there was something else I was supposed to do. So I didn't really feel like it was time to go. And I will say the lightness, it's one of the reasons I talk about on my channel, um, that about Let Them, the Mel Robbins book, that the Four Agreements, the other philosophies of live your life to the fullest but purest. And I will say being in the purest thought is freaking hard
Yeah.
because as I'm going through this experiencing, witnessing my father dying, I am
And
furious with some of the people and his treatment and the way that they did things. But I'm not a medical professional. And, um, and I have done my own healing work. And this has been a lesson is it's not really about the other people. It's
yeah.
your response.
Yeah.
So
Because I
whether it's
think,
in youth or senior years, because I'm going to be turning at the end of this month, I'm turning 62. Holy shit. Um, and it's like, so theoretically, what do I have? 20 years, maybe 30 years. There's still a lot of life in that 20-year period
Mhm.
to redefine, what's the word, Ben?
build.
Sort of, yes, exactly. It's rebuild, it's refine, it's just coming out with, I have to let some of that anger go. You have,
Mm,
and I've had shit happen.
It's
I've
mhm.
okay.
been
You
in
were
bed
a
a couple of
seed, you
times.
grew into a grapevine, they picked you, they squished you into wine, and now you're like aging.
I love that.
You're becoming finer with age.
Well, and I'm becoming the elder within
and
my
your
family.
flavor is
Aw,
maturing.
that's really sweet. Um,
Heaney,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Heaney
uh,
had a comment here. I believe it
well,
was Seeker who asked if you came back instantaneously.
I
Oh,
didn't.
you
But
when I
I
had
think
my thought, I think
Indigo
he
did.
was asking me, right?
I think
Um
so.
no. So there was a moment in the ambulance. So I had the thought as my spiritual self, like, "Oh, I should come back." And then in the ambulance, I was like, "I should," cuz like I assume I fell asleep, right? Because I said I'm going to take a nap and then I had this moment.
Yep.
And like I say, like I'm guessing cuz yeah, I was out of time.
Yeah,
Time
and
is a construct. It's so
it
freaking weird
is. It
to try
is.
to, like you said, to articulate it, but basically what happened was because like I was on a gurney
Yep.
on my back and
Yep.
how you are when you're in an ambulance. I had a moment where I was aware that I was coming back to my body,
Mhm.
and for some reason, I had a very clear moment of like, "Can I move my fingers?" like was a thought that I had in my head, because they say like when you have sleep paralysis, which I've
Yeah.
had before,
Yeah.
it's like try to move your fingers or toes to just like, because with sleep paralysis, your body is asleep, but
Mhm.
your mind is awake and aware that
Awake.
you're dreaming.
Yep.
And so I almost had this weird effect of where I thought my body in the ambulance was like a dream.
Mm, mhm.
Like I was dreaming that I was coming back and
Yep.
that I needed to like move my hand.
Wow.
It was really bizarre. And then like I clicked back and I was almost annoyed when the EMT woke me up and was like questioning me.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the
I was
things I
like,
just
"Why? Like, just leave me alone." And they're like,
yeah.
"No, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
like, they're freaking out because they're
Yep.
like, "The fuck?"
Yep. Yep.
You know?
And
So,
one of the things that Heaney just said is, as a reminder, we're not our age, we are eternal. And I think that our consciousness is eternal. And I think when we are awakening and we do physically die, I don't believe that
Mhm.
my brain, my consciousness, I think it goes. I think I go on to the next journey. I actually think there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I hope there's answers to all of my
I think
questions.
a
But
Yes.
part of me, I think I came back different though.
oh, I know I did. So I can tell you I came back different.
I think my threshold for like honesty is important to me. It always has been, or like living authentically. And my patience for anyone or anything trying to like push me in a way where I'm like, no, that's not right. Like before, I might have been like, okay, let's just figure out a way to get through the day. And now I'm like, no, I'm not, like I'm not dealing with that anymore. Like, you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
almost like, I think also too, it just made me realize like, so when you talk about like that deep grief,
Hmm.
for me, like my birth father died when I was 18
Yep.
and I met him. So like I knew my birth grandparents because they were part of my adoption. Well, essentially they were asked, but they were already in their like 60s or 70s, I want to say, cuz like yeah, they like my birth father's parents were already pretty old by the time I was born. And so
Okay.
the court was like, "Oh, do you wanna take them?" And they were like, "We're too old."
Yeah.
And so when my parents were adopting me, um, and so, like, I always had connection to his parents and, like, him, and I had just been starting to get to know him at 18 when he died,
Yeah.
and I held on to anger for a long time to everyone in my family because he, like, went into a coma. And then they were sort of like, "Well, to protect you at 18 from this horribly raw emotional baggage, we're just gonna, like, not make an effort to let you go see him and, like, not let you say goodbye and, like,
Yeah.
not put you through that." And I'm like, "But I want to."
Yeah. So,
Like, I wanna say goodbye to him, so, like, I think seeing him and when my birth mom died when I was I might have got my age wrong. Anyway, when my birth mom died, I felt that grief you were talking about, like
yeah,
the just crushing, like,
it's crushing. Yeah. And
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 so
I
like
think
yeah, so
I think it's a series of events that happen in your life that lead you to certain experiences, right? And so,
mhm.
um, I don't to answer proudly ignorance comment also, did I feel like I had a choice in coming back? I don't remember it being a choice. Honestly, it
Mhm.
just was. So if
Mm.
there was something that happened prior, I don't have an awareness. I really do want to do like a regression I'd be curious to see if I recall anything. But I also think that maybe I'm not supposed to know. Like it's enough that I'm here. Now I have decisions to make. And I had decisions to make to not live in hurt and pain and suffering
Mhm.
and grief. And prior to this event and prior to even my mom getting sick and dying, I'd had some shit, and no different than anybody else in this chat.
Man.
Seeker, I'm so happy you're here and you've been through some shit. I don't even know your story, but
Mm.
I know your story just from some of the things you're put in the chat. Um, and your life force was really powerful to want you to be back. You made a choice to come back. Um, I um it I don't think I knew I was dying at the moment. So I don't think there was that awareness like, oh shit, I'm dead.
Oh.
Um, you know what I mean? I think that my brain protected me as I was passing out, and I felt safe because there were doctors there and someone was talking to someone I loved. My best friend had my back. She would reach my brothers. At the time, I was not speaking to my father, but they did reach out to him.
Mm.
And that awareness in the hospital room with my father being there and eventually, me getting some physical movements back. It was almost like a baby when the babies, can sit up. They're like, "Oh, yay!" You could
Yeah,
hear
right?
everybody going, "Oh my god, she's wiggling her fingers. Oh my
Yeah.
god, she's wiggling her toes."
Oh, yeah, no,
And
I very much chose to come back. So I had
Okay.
2 main awarenesses. Mine was, in the ambulance, my, living brain, like the brain that was still aware that my earthly body was in trouble, went, "I'm too young to die."
yep,
I mean, I was only 25, right? Like, think
Mm.
about that. I'm
right.
34 now. I'm turning
Yeah,
35 this year. I mean, I
you were
look
a
at all
baby.
I've been through in the last s shoot, 10 years this June.
Yeah. Well, and I would
And
also
but I
say
think
more
too
than 10 years because prior to your accident, you still lived a life that impacted decisions and your
that's true.
spirituality.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
really, I believe our birth, our life, our death stories, our interim from the moment that we come out of that womb, we are impacted and shaped by every event that
Yeah.
we experience, good, bad, and ugly. I mean, when I was in the height of my physical illness with endometriosis and the tumors in my uterus, and I stood in Boston on the Boston Bridge, BU Bridge, and I thought, if I just jump, I won't feel this pain anymore because no one was listening to me. It
Mm.
was like, it's all in your head. And I'm like, it's not effing in my head. It's,
Girl,
you
Yeah.
they
know,
told me the same thing.
so, now they have other things that, wouldn't result in hysterectomies.
Mm.
But my life path also knew from a little girl, I would never give birth. I knew I would never give birth. So for me, um,
Oh, wow.
what
There's just
kept
some
me
deep
from not
spiritual, yeah.
jumping was was sort of a faith, but it was a very, so being
So did you have your, like, chronic illness, I guess, with the endometriosis started pretty young, I would
oh, it
assume.
started, sorry,
And
Ben, from the very first menstruation, I
and
had
then
nothing but problems.
like,
Mm.
so did you have your first NDE, or I guess your first heart attack before or after you had that moment where you wanted to
Oh, I had it after. I was
after,
in my
okay.
early 20s when I was experiencing that excruciating pain. And and then I was put on those I finally found a doctor who listened. And was
Yeah,
put
because
on the
my NDE happened before my attempt.
yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
So I was like,
Yeah. I'm
um,
sorry. Yeah.
yeah, so I had like my NDE, which is weird because after my NDE, I was like, oh, I chose to come back.
Yeah.
And then I was with an abusive boyfriend,
Yep.
and my birth mom died. And then I was like in this crushing cycle of like just feeling stuck and like I wasn't gonna
Yep.
get anywhere. And then I was like, it was almost weird because I want to say like the level of oh, trigger warning, self deletion. Sorry guys, I laugh with
Yeah,
like this stuff because
I get it.
I mean, uh, this sounds crazy to me to repeat, but it's like I'm
Yeah.
34
Yeah.
and my issues with chronic illness probably started at like 19.
Yeah.
Well, before that, actually, I finally found a doctor that will listen about other issues I was having. But
Yep.
it's like I repeat everything I've been. So if I haven't seen a friend in a while, I'm like, do you want the Cliff Notes version with just the happy highlights? Do you want the Cliff Notes version with the dark highlights, or do you want to like sit for like 6 hours? Because
So,
like
and
it's
I
a
would
lot
challenge
to
you. I
like
would
to
challenge you
push
in that.
in.
I would challenge you in this to say, why do you feel the need to tell them the story? So, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
not
just
for
different
today.
things. It's like
Yeah.
it's just like leading, like you said, choices and experiences led up to how I guess visualized. Also, too, like there's a lot of visualization in media for NDEs or
Mm,
stuff like being white light or being tunnels or like happening a certain way. So for a while, I was almost like, did I have this experience or
I see.
did I make it up? And then I was like, I couldn't have though because
It doesn't matter. I would say this to you. It doesn't matter. So your experience is your experience. And
yeah.
um, I would say you did not make it up. I think if we were talking now and you started to embellish and talk about all this other stuff, then yeah, that's an attention grab. And please see me and please, acknowledge that I'm back and I'm alive. I think that's one of the reasons with my NDE, I've been really honest that I didn't have the angels and that the white light and go back and come in and, oh, here are the messages for you. And you need to go out into the world and do X, Y, and Z. I think that I would have loved to been able to say to you, I had that freaking experience and I have all this knowledge they, gave me. Maybe they did. I don't have that awareness. I have the awareness of the peace that I think I needed.
Yeah.
I was missing that calm, peaceful. There was this overwhelming sense of love,
Mhm.
but there was no voice that said you've got to go back. And there was, or it's time to come. There wasn't that conversation. Um and
And see, I find
afterwards,
that so interesting.
yeah, and afterwards I really did um the first year after the event, I was euphoric. I was light and grateful and joyful. And even though took me a long time to get the blood back into the heart and a long time for that healthful feeling,
Mhm.
what it also did to my brain, which I still have remnants of, it's slower and it takes me longer to comprehend. And I used to read voraciously, and I can't concentrate in the same way. I can't read that book. It's so infuriating to me. Working with numbers, I'm making some mistakes. When I have big decisions to make, I have to call somebody to say, wait, I need somebody to be here with me. I'm not getting what someone's telling me. Now, most of the time someone's trying to schmooze you into something and I'm like, I'm not going to do this because I don't know if you're telling me the truth if this is what I am hearing, I
Mhm.
second guess myself. And then there's other areas where I know as clear as day, I don't have time for that bullshit. I love you. I send you with love and light, but I'm not playing those games. I'm
Yeah,
done. I'm not
for
playing the
sure.
games. I love you, but
Mm.
here's my line. And I no longer give two hoots in a handbasket if you know
2
you
hoots
want
in a handbasket, I love that.
if you want to play that game with me, you want to be obnoxious or you want to push my buttons, I just say, I sent you with love and I'm going to go now. And wait. I'm not playing the game because life is short. I could still die tomorrow.
Do you think you
Unlikely.
interpret grief differently? Because grief
Yes.
played a lot into my I guess, plays a lot into my fears and, um and why I push to have, like, authentic connections with
Yeah.
people
Yep.
is because I'm so afraid of losing them.
Mm.
Because, like, between 18
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
27, we lost all of my mom's siblings.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so I have this fear of, like, I'm mortal. I've confronted now 2 different times in my life. One, which was a car accident that was kinda out of my control, right? Like,
Yep.
the guy was speeding. There was no way I could've
Right.
guessed how fast he was driving, you know what I mean? So the timing of it. And then it's like, I also
Made a choice.
survived myself
Yep.
when I like, I failed that, and so it just makes me kinda wonder, I think that's why I seek so much authenticity. Like, if someone's fake, I'm just like, "I'm done."
Well, and
Like, I
so
used to
that's
give second chances, like, I used to be like, "Okay, well, second chance." No. Like, I give a chance, and then if that chance is burned, like, no more second chance, you know what I mean?
so I think it depends on where you are in your journey,
Yeah.
I in my journey, in my life experiences now, in the way that I want to live my life, I don't need to have the many. I only need to have the few.
Mm.
And you get to
Mhm.
choose to be with me or not. And one of the things that I've learned is what's important to me is not always as important to the people that are in my life today, right? So it might be really important to me for my friends to be around me and to hang out with me on have Sunday brunch. And if I don't make the effort to have it and they don't include me, I'm no longer wounded because it's not their jam, it's my jam, but I wasn't able to see the difference. So
Yeah.
being in this new sort of touch space, I think has allowed me to say, this is me. You can like me or love me or not.
Mm.
And the not
Yeah,
part,
that's where I
you
am.
get to, and that's the same on YouTube, right? People, if you've been part of a community and it no longer wants you, for the love of God, let it go.
Mm.
Let it freaking go. Go
And
where
I've
you
Mm.
had
are
that
in.
happen too, where it's like I I feel very strongly that patterns I had in my 20s are repeating and timing wise are coming
Mhm.
back, and
Okay.
I've kept boundaries in place that I put down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've noticed that I'm starting to meet more people who are genuinely curious.
Mm.
Okay.
Like, I'm less offended to answer a question someone might ask in an ignorant way if they're just genuinely
Curious.
Sure.
curious
Yeah.
about the topic, because I've been there too with
Yeah.
either I'll meet someone I don't really understand their culture, or
Right.
I'm
Mm.
very blunt and tend to just be direct. I'll be like, "Oh, what have you experienced in your life?" And then
Yeah.
see what people say.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, bluntness can kinda be one of those double-edged swords as well when it comes to, like, how honestly I'll answer a question. Like if someone wants my honest opinion, I'll be like, "Are you sure?" Like at least once I'll ask because I'm like, I'll give it. I'll give my like, I won't sugarcoat things anymore because for me, I'm like, I didn't choose to come back, like you said, to like walk on eggshells and, you know, play games. Like I'm here to learn, and sometimes that means that I go through hard things. Like, when people say like, "Oh, you've dealt pretty well with like all these things." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's a lot behind the scenes too." Like you said,
See, there we are.
Yes, this is Shell. This is
I'm
if
here
you
to
can turn
learn,
down
and
your
sometimes that means that
Okay,
go through
hold
hard
on.
things.
Let's see.
Like,
yeah, if
when
you can turn
people
down
say
your
like, "Oh, you've
My
dealt
volume.
pretty well with like all
Oh
these
my
things."
goodness.
I'm like, "Yeah, but there's a lot
Let's see.
behind the scenes too."
that's okay. No, this is Seeker of Truth. She's been in the chat. I wasn't going to put your name up or anything, just to let you know. But let's try bring up your volume now and seeing. Yeah, I just wonder if you'd be interested in telling your experience with this.
Oh wow, my video isn't doing so well. Hold on.
That's okay. Perfectly
There.
fine.
That's better.
There you go. Okay.
While I shut it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so some years ago, like 25 years ago or something, like in 2005,
Mhm.
I was with a very abusive man, and we were going, and I was on drugs and not doing so well in my personal life. And I took 3 bottles of pills that I had just refilled, and I killed myself. And I fell asleep on my mom's living room floor. She was supposed to be at work, and she came home early from work and found me, and I was dead already. I had got up to throw up, but I don't know if I made it to the bathroom. My mom said I was on the floor when she found me. And so the ambulance got there and they tried to bring me back to life several times.
Mhm.
And so I went to the hospital, and in that time, I don't know what happened after that. I don't really know what happened anyway. My mom told me all of that.
Mhm.
But when I died, what I remember when I died is I woke up in all of this black stuff, blackness, like when you close your eyes in the blackness. But I was floating, and I had my legs crossed like Indian style, and I was floating. And there was, it felt like a being or something attached to the back of my head. And I could feel information, like it wasn't words, it was just a feeling that was coming into my body. And I don't know everything that was given to me, but I do remember that it was telling me that I had a choice. I could go back, and I wasn't finished, but I could stay there if I wanted to. But I could go back, and I chose to come back, but I didn't remember any of it until like 2 or 3 weeks later. And I started getting the day visions. Like I was like, what the heck? I was seeing this in my mind in the daytime, and I was just like, wow, I don't know what's happening. And then, years later, like 2 years later, I mean, like 2 years ago, not 2 years later, but like 2 years ago, I started having Akashic readings. And I asked the Akashics because I've been thinking about it the whole time. Where was I? What happened to me? And so the Akashics told me that I was in the dark void of creation, the blackness of creation. And I was also told that it was the creator that was speaking to me, attached to my brain and like in the back of my head. And
Wow.
even now, when I close my eyes and think about it, I'm going to start crying because it was so
It's
beautiful. Yeah. And I can still feel it when I close my eyes and think about that. I can feel it attached to my head. I can feel the information. I can feel the beauty of the love that was there. And at the time, I didn't want to come back here. I really didn't. You know, my life was, excuse my language, my life was shitty, and
Yep.
I was just not good. And, but after that, my life got better. I mean, it took time and it took a lot of working, but once I got to that point and I realized, you know, whatever happened, it was a benefit to me because my children have their mom. I'm not dead. And now here at this point in time in my life, I couldn't have asked for a more important thing to happen to me, because without that, I wouldn't have gone down these searching avenues to figure out what the heck happened.
Right.
And that led me into all the information that I'm getting now from the Akashics, from all of you lovely people, you know, all of our friendships here. It's just, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Spirit will lead you where you have to go, like, or I guess your higher self. Like, I believe that we all have a higher self, but kind of like modern society disconnects us from that. And the more that I kind of lean into following my own path or hearing other people's stories and like kind of having that relationship of like, I can be accepting of what your faith is or isn't. Like, if I connect with someone and they're an atheist or they don't believe there's anything out there, but but it's like you have these conversations, you learn where people have come from, and the more that I hear people's stories and kind of what they believe, I grow more as myself. Because I'm able to say, like, I can empathize with, you know, that raw emotion. And love you too, Flick.
So Shelley, can I ask, in your moment of experience with that higher power, whatever it is, and I do believe that, you know, coming into this life before we got here, we did choose to be in this body and have this experience because there was something we needed to learn, and we also have something to teach. So, you know, I wonder, as you went through, and whether it was the Akashic records or your spiritual journey, do you feel more, I don't know if it's grounded or peaceful now, when you are challenged with obstacles?
Sometimes, yes, it's easier, just because I feel like I'm in a different space than a lot of people. And I know that sounds like weird or something, but it really doesn't. Like, half the time I'm not even here. Like, I'm here, but I'm not here. Like, I'm in two places at one time, a lot of the time. So, yes.
Would you say you're still connected to that other space?
Yes.
Wow. That's a gift. I mean, well, to me, it's a gift. I don't know how you feel, but I that sounds, you're tethered to that light.
It kind of feels that way, because when I can just close my eyes and go there, you know, it's, yeah. And I get the same feelings. Like, it's something I will never, ever, ever forget in my life, ever.
Wow.
And that you guys have already answered my other questions in this very holistic way. But yeah, I was going to ask, but yeah, you guys already answered it. The change life that you've had afterwards. Is there? Do you find there's permanency, or I don't know what I'm trying to think of? Do you find that effect is still goes with you to this day?
Yes.
Well, yeah, and I think for me, I think there's a knowing that I literally could go anytime. So do I want to waste that time with stupid stuff, Or
Right.
do I want the decisions I make, do
No.
I want them to matter or have an impact? And
Mhm.
Mm.
so I think that goes along a little bit with what Indigo was talking about earlier with,
Yeah.
we have a bullshit meter that some of it isn't really,
Right.
look,
Yeah.
if I go tomorrow, I don't want to be laying on my deathbed going,
Yeah.
"Ugh, I had a fight
Sure.
with Indigo and it was stupid. And I don't want to have that in my life." It's like,
Yeah.
Indigo, I'm sorry, this is my experience from our conversation yesterday. And Indigo can say to me, "Oh my God, that's not what I meant at all." Instead of me holding on to something that I imagined, right?
No,
I
sure.
heard a tone or I imagined something instead of saying, this was my experience yesterday, not accusing her. I'm not saying you said this to me. I'm saying, in our conversation yesterday, I was really hurt. This is what I heard. I don't know if you meant it. And so
Yeah,
that
that's
gives
so
that
important. That's what my uh, modus operandi in life is. That's a weird way to say it, but if I'm confused about something or I want clarity, I just go to
the
the
source.
source.
Mhm.
Because I feel that I also have gifts that manifested before my own my own NDE experience that are make me believe
Mm.
very strongly what I believe in. So it
Mhm.
was like
Can
all
you
these things.
can you explain what you just meant? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when I was in 8th grade, I had an out of body experience where I saw my uncle die of a heart attack.
Okay.
But it was I was doing it while I was asleep. So I interpret it as a nightmare
Okay.
and woke up upset, obviously upset. And my parents tried just to be like, it's probably just a nightmare. And then a couple hours later, we got a phone call that my uncle died of a heart. I was like, he was in his office. He died of a heart attack. I know this is the truth. And my
Yeah.
parents were like, you were asleep. You're in 8th grade. Where is this coming from? And so I think for me, when I had that more spiritual link portion, I guess, of my NDE, I was like, oh, well, duh. Like,
Mm.
I'm also a medium of some kind. I've gotten messages or intuitions about people passing away or just even positive things. I knew my friend was pregnant before she was pregnant because she told me in a dream.
So are those
Interesting.
things that you experienced before your NDE or after your NDE?
So the uncle one was before.
Okay.
So
So
we
you are an intuitive before all of this stuff happened
yes,
already.
and we confirmed with family that is in Finland. So my mom's family comes from Scandinavia, and a lot of them still follow the old ways where they actually are very spiritual and kind of encourage that connection and deep thought and exploration. And so kind of having that before the NDE and then coming back, deciding to come back. I made the choice to come back.
Yeah.
And then having the self-deletion where I failed just made me realize, well, I decided to come back. So if it wasn't my time at 25 and I failed at 27, and I'm still here and I'm making an impact and I'm growing as a being, clearly I was meant to choose to come back.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I just think it's all cyclical. There's patterns repeating in my life right now, spiritually and physically and emotionally, where I'm like, okay, I really see now in retrospect how it all like clicks together.
Okay.
I agree with that.
And
100%.
yeah, Shelley, with you in your still tethered connection, which which do you feel like it keeps you more grounded than previous?
Okay, so before my experience as growing up, I
Yep.
had dreams that come true. I
Okay.
could tell people in the daytime that was going to happen in a couple weeks. I predicted my grandpa's death. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So I've been an experiencer my whole life. So
Yep.
yes, things were
Okay.
different even after, because it just became more of what I
Yep.
was already doing.
Makes sense. It sounds like you're highly intuitive, but again, I just was asking that question because if you already had that, sometimes it's almost a torment until you can sort of grab onto it and accept it as a gift rather than something that's torturing you and with the
Right.
knowing. And look,
Yeah. Go ahead.
and we know people don't accept, especially if you're a young one, knowing this stuff. And then as you become an older person, you're more hesitant to share that you know stuff because people then look at you and they're like, oh, she's a fruitcake.
Yeah, exactly. When I was younger, my mom was such a good mom. Like, I told my mom the things that I saw, and my mom was like, if you're seeing it, it's there. So my mom made it so much easier for me to be real about it. But with other people, I didn't tell anybody nothing, because you're right.
Sure.
People look at you like, what in the world are you talking about? You're in Lululand.
Yep.
I have had that intuition before where I know that I met someone in college that I knew from a prior life. But in this life, he is not on a path where he is open to that thought process. He's experiencing what he needs to experience in his journey in this incarnation. And I knew that, like, when I met him in college, that was the first time this body met him. And I very clearly knew that, and I said it to him, and he was like, "Fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah. So,
and then he avoided me for 3 years. And I was like, I mean, that's totally fair, but I knew clear as day. Like, I shook his hand. I like shook his hand, and in that moment I was like, "Oh, I know that I know you." And I remember saying that, "I know you." He's like, "No, you don't." And I was like,
yeah. So I have a cute little sweet story about me and Neil, my husband. So when we first met, I was married to the guy that tried to kill me, that broke my legs in a car wreck. Okay. So I met Neil, and we were just friends.
oh my
And
god.
throughout my whole marriage to this other guy, I kept dreaming, and just his face would be in my dreams, just his face, nothing else. It would just float by in my dreams. And 3 years later, we were together, and now we've been together for 20 years.
That's a beautiful story.
Our Tim,
You know,
Oh my goodness. I'm so that's amazing. I mean, not the trauma part, but like
no,
the
Right.
yeah.
Right.
sure.
the spiritual
get what you're saying.
connection and like
Yes.
yeah, and to have that I think that's why it's so important for me that people that I'm friends with just accept me the way I am. Like, I'm not gonna try to convert you. Like, I come also, like, I was raised in an openly spiritual environment. Like, um my early upbringing roots were in like the Lutheran and Presbyterian church. So I'm like the only twice confirmed Christian witch that I know in my life. Like, I was confirmed Lutheran because they did that pretty young. I think theirs was middle school, and then by the time I was in high school, the church I was at was mostly like older people. Like all
Mhm.
the people with families kind of like moved on to other churches. So I ended up going to the Presbyterian church, and they confirmed me when I was in high school. And then my parents always said, like, you're going to go out and you're going to meet people, and they're going to be from different groups. And those groups might tell them, like, the people from these other groups might tell their members that, like, people they meet are going to judge them and be cruel. Because I asked my mom pretty young, why are you talking to this person when you know that you're not going to become Mormon? And they're like, well, it's 80 degrees out, so I'm letting them sit in our air conditioned house for a few minutes. But she said, what's the harm in listening?
Mm.
And she would be upfront with
That's
them.
right.
She'd be upfront. She'd be like, it's really warm out. Like, why don't you come inside? I'm probably not going to convert, but I'll listen to you. And so that
Right.
taught me from a young age that there's no harm in listening,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
Because you gain an understanding of where someone's come from. So so I just grew up in an open environment. My uncle was Buddhist. My other aunt was Baha'i. Like, my family was not just one religion.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's very unique. Like,
It
in
is.
terms of when I look at my other friends who it's like, oh no, their family was hardcore Catholic. They're not, but their family, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Right.
for me, I really kind of like absorbed that as people believe in so many, they call it something different, but my instinct has always been that it's the same thing. We just
Yeah.
call it something different.
Mm. Artem writes, Shelley, can you talk about how you communicate with the Akashics? What do you mean? Like in meditation, comma, what is that like?
I have an Akashic reader that I go to. Her name's Courtney, Stars of the Morning Light. She does Akashic readings, and I get an Akashic reading from her once a month. And it's basically I give her questions. She goes to the Akashics. I'm with her on the phone, and we do a little thing on the phone. And then I give her questions, and she asks the Akashics, and they give me the answers.
Ooh, I'd like her information.
Okay.
But that's amazing. And what you're saying about the Akashics is also very much like I just had a brain freeze on what it's called. Shoot.
Mediums, Challenger.
Yeah,
or-
it'll come back to me in a minute. It's just a unique title that's in my head, but it'll come back. But I like the idea of tapping in regression. So past life regressions, you have your
She
Akashic
does that too.
records. I wonder if you have so this is my question then, Shelley. Do you have to, or are they similar? Is doing a past life regression similar to reading an Akashic record, or are they totally different from each other?
Well, when I have had my past life regressions done, I've only asked a couple of them, but I do it through the Akashics, and Courtney will ask the Akashics about it if I have a question. And then the Akashics will tell me whatever it is that I'm asking about my past life.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. It's something that, and again, this is something I struggle with because I almost feel like if the love that was beyond wanted me to clearly see things, would it have been presented to me that I would have an awareness? And so I guess I'd like my Akashic records or someone to say, look, there's just stuff that you're going to have to still go through.
That's exactly right. I have to say, because I wondered sometimes how come I just don't know. And it's because we're not ready for it yet. We're not ready for certain 100%. Things. And so it's not going to come to us until we're ready. Period. That's it.
Yep.
And
or sometimes it comes when you're not like and I don't want to really say, so there was like a real world event that happened recently where I had a weird experience the night that it happened. Like I was here, I think, doing a live with someone, and I got this weird feeling where like my entire body went like cold, like not like cold, but like I had an intuition and I was like, no, I can't help you right now. And then like the spirit went away, but then the next day in a chat someone was like, hey, this real world thing happened, and like here was the result. And I was like, I DM'd them like, did this real world thing happen around this time yesterday? Because like once you open yourself up to your gift or your purpose spiritually, like sometimes you have to be able to put a boundary down with your spiritual door, I guess, and be like, okay, not right now. Like I remember when I used to live with my ex, we were like triangulated between like 3 different cemeteries in the area, or like around a radius of where we lived, and he would mess with stuff all the time, and I'd be like, dude, you gotta stop doing this. Like I had one night where I literally had to be like, hey spirits, when I'm in this room, like my bedroom, in bed trying to sleep, can you leave me alone, let me
Yeah, you
sleep?
have to set
And then
boundaries
like
up.
all the activity stopped, almost like they were like, sorry, we'll wait when you're not in your bedroom. Because like it's like once you start following your path, you're gonna get more and more connections, but you're also gonna get more and more challenges
Yes.
because you're ready to, like you were saying, like you found your Akashic reader when you were ready to not just hear the message, but understand what it was saying.
Yes.
Because sometimes if you hear a message when you're not ready to understand it,
It'll pass you right by.
it just doesn't do you any
Nope.
good. You know,
It sure doesn't. And I've learned too that I have to have boundaries. And Courtney taught me this too, that like in your home, because you will get bombarded the more you use your abilities. And you have to have boundaries in certain areas of your home. Like my bedroom is off limits. You can't be in my bedroom. My kitchen, that's my space where I like to love cooking, and things like that.
were you a kitchen witch too?
Yes,
Do
I
you
am.
do like a little bit same?
But also, when I get a message that is like a precog message and I don't want it right now, and I like if it's a bad one, like something bad's going to happen to somebody, I will say no, 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 and then it will not happen. But if I don't say no, 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 then it happens, and it's really weird. That's how I've gotten there. How to stop stuff sometimes.
Ben, you're on mute.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, I am.
Oh, you are. Okay.
Awakened, or rather, as her name is correctly pronounced in the non-vulgar way, Awake Ned, asks the panel, going to be asking a different question, might sound strange unless it doesn't. How many of us were treated differently as children, like during school, testing, etc.? Wow.
I was.
And I would say that it wasn't in the way that the gifts of both Shelley and Indigo have. But I was incredibly empathic and sensitive, and I was a highly sensitive kid. And I was ostracized. I was made fun of in my home, as well as outside of it. And I grew up in a Catholic family, so I find that I bet if you looked at this chat, those of us that just think differently, and by the way, every single one of us does think differently.
Yeah.
It's just that there's commonalities, and I had no commonalities with anyone. I still
Mhm.
don't. Well, no, that's not true anymore. In my spiritual world, in my energy healing practices and community, there is that simpatico relationship. But yes, I definitely felt like an odd girl. And I'm going to step away for a second because my pup needs to tinkle.
Yeah, but
Like,
we're
so cute.
I'm going to have to end this soon. So I'll just go around the room really quick. Any closing thoughts? Indigo Twin.
Um, hang on.
I
Hey,
noticed that
self, can you like stay in my brain, please? Okay, great. Sorry. I just had a moment. I was gonna say, when you start living your authentic self, things
Mhm.
or people that don't vibe with that will fall away faster than you can imagine. Like you won't have to do any work.
Mm.
And it's going to be scary, but it's making room for the people and the connections that will get you through your next phase.
Uh, Theresa, just in case you didn't,
Sure.
that's actually pretty powerful.
So I would
Oh,
say, I would say, have an open heart and an open mind in your conversations with others. You don't necessarily have to agree, but be respectful of the uniqueness of a person. I would also say that if someone is near death through cancer or Alzheimer's or some other manner, in a coma for some reason, talk to them and let them
Mhm.
know that they are safe because they can't communicate, and let them know, I know you can't actually speak to me right now, but I believe what you want to say is, and then share with, in the case of my dad, I know he loves me. I know he wants to make sure his wife is taken care of, and he loves his freaking garden. So we wanted him to know that
Mm.
we're going to keep his garden for him. It's going to be taken care of. And that's really important to him. And he can't
Mm.
articulate it. So by saying it, I'm telling you, if I could hear on the other side, and when my mother was dying, I knew she could hear my voice.
Mhm.
So talk to those people and let them know that they are hugely loved in this life and that they'll be hugely loved as they go to the next journey.
any closing thoughts, Seeker of Truth?
Interesting. Yeah. Be the observer in your life. You know, stand back, pay attention, and listen to what other people are saying, and don't necessarily stack. Just listen and observe. And when someone is passing, pay attention. They reach out. They talk to other beings because they're right there in front of them. Sometimes too, because I'm not here all the time. Like sometimes I'm in another space, like for real, and I see those beings. You know they're real. And so just pay attention to those that are dying, because when they're reaching out for somebody or saying they're dancing with their loved one, or I'm trying to reach you, they really are. They're really just be aware
Mm.
and love them.
And with that, there's plenty more that we could discuss. Maybe we'll do a show on sensitivity in general. Um, yes, look, I'll be contacting you all if you're interested. This would be a
For
fascinating
sure.
subject to dig into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in closing, it takes a lot of courage to speak about something that others might scoff at, dismiss, or reduce to brain chemicals, but
Mm-hmm.
lived experiences, especially when it comes to brings peace, clarity, or compassion, deserves to be heard, not judged. Whether these stories are glimpses of beyond the veil or simply deep dives into human consciousness, they remind us that mystery is still a part of being alive. Maybe that's enough. Thank you for being a part of a space where wonder is welcome, where people are safe to tell their life's journey. I want to thank you all so much. You are all fascinating people. Thank you for making this planet a better place.
Oh, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ben. Thanks for hosting. Really appreciate it. And thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories and everyone else in the chat sharing theirs. Bless you all.
Thank you,
Yes,
Ben.
love
Thank
and
you,
light.
Indigo. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Yep.